It is deadline day. I am here at 20 minutes Tim's Towers. We are going to rank Celtic's all-time summer deadline day signings. I'm joined by Martin Melly.
Yes.
And Stephen.
Good to be here.
Did you not get the memo, lads? It is deadline day, and you know what that means. That means I had to rush out and buy my own Sky Sports tie. I would never wear a tie this horrendous. The label is still on it. The suit, though, and glasses are models' own.
That's
my yellow tie.
Screaming out for mercy in it.
It is. Well, do you know why? Because this is made for a man with a 32-inch chest, where I'm 34 inches of sheer muscular action. Do you know what I mean? The back is busting out, the shoulders can barely contain it, but the button, as you described, Melly, is not in shot.
Yeah, my yellow tie's in the wash today, sadly, so I've come a little bit too casual for deadline day, but you know.
And Melly's came dressed as Neil Lennon. So, anyone familiar with deadline day will know how it works. Sky Sports make a big deal out of players joining your clubs, and not much happens around Celtic Park, but there has been a history of deadline day signings. In fact, 23 we managed to dig out summer deadline day signings, and we are going to rank them in our own tier list fashion. Stephen and Melly, we have came up with the tiers between us, and the tiers are as follows that I have settled on. 1, blockbuster signing. No argument.
Self-explanatory. The
Guy.
elite of the elite. The best of the best deadline day signings.
Top tier. The absolute blockbuster. 2, good bit of business.
Still good. Still very, very good, but just not the absolute elite. So yeah, good bit of business can mean a number of things, but it's going to be the second tier.
The 4th tier, I'm skipping a tier, but it's okay, is expected more. Comes in, decent reputation, expected a wee bit more.
Yeah.
The final tier, number 5, outright flop. Right?
Going to be busy, that one, isn't it?
Darren Ramsey, the outright flop, right? Now, the mathematicians amongst you will have noticed that I skipped a tier there. Tier number 3 was missing from my list, and I've called that tier Effie Ambrose.
Right. All will become clear in
For
time.
a situation that will become clear when we're sitting down looking at this list and we can't quite figure out, we've got a tier called Effie Ambrose. Now, in no particular order, I hope, because I've put this dish, I'll tell you what, been a while since I've worn this. Shoulders and back are a lot bigger. That's all I'm saying. No particular order. I put them in a random name generator, and we have come up with a list. First up in that list, Ryan Christie, Martin Melly.
Oh.
Tell us a wee bit about that transfer. What do you remember from the Ryan Christie transfer?
Well, he came on deadline day, but he was loaned back to Inverness immediately, wasn't he? Under Ronnie Dylan, I'm sure. So he went back to Inverness, but we recalled him in the January, and then didn't really play too much. He did score in Ronnie Dyler's last game, the famous 7-0 against Motherwell.
As a false 9 that day.
And then he played a bit under the start with Brendan Rodgers. I remember he scored at St Johnstone, but then was loaned out for Aberdeen for 2 seasons. Don't think Rodgers fancied him then. When we had a bit of injury crisis, he came in at Murrayfield against Hearts and scored, and then became a big player. So Ryan Christie became a first team player for Celtic, but he never really started off like that, did he?
150 appearances, 41 goals for Ryan Christie. His career trajectory, as Melly said, it just kept rising, and now he finds himself playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a strange anomaly, Christie, in that he is the maybe one case where you can actually pinpoint and say that alone actually did him the world of good, and he came back as a better player to establish himself as a Celtic player.
Impressive, considering it was under Derek McInnes.
Correct, yeah. That rarely happens. I have come to view loans after a certain point in a Celtic player's career, after the age of about 21 or so. If you go out on loan from Celtic, I tend to see it as the beginning of the end. Basically, you won't be back. But Christie is the one guy who kind of bucked that trend, maybe to the point where people cite it a little bit too much, where we might have players in the squad just now. Mikey Johnson is often mentioned. We say, but look what happened to Ryan Christie. But he is the one guy that's ever happened
the problem, well, it's starting to happen to Ralston a bit now as well, isn't it? It's starting to happen to Ralston a wee bit. For a long time, the argument was any time you wrote a player off, he says, that guy's not good enough, needs to go and find football, people would go, Ryan Christie. Play the Ryan Christie card as if that was an answer to everything. So
before we close that completely off. We have had successful loans of guys who go out and come back as better players, but never after the age of about 20. Callum McGregor was quite young. Christopher Ayer was quite young as well, but Christie was the guy who went out having already played a lot of football and then came back as a better player.
I suppose that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point not playing, going out on loan, not playing, or going at such a low level that you don't play. Ryan Christie went out to a good level and played consistently, and he was Aberdeen's Player of the Year, if I remember correctly.
Scored against the Huns at Ibrox as well.
Scored against the Huns at Ibrox, so that's reason enough to bring him back. So let me remind you of the tiers. Blockbuster.
What are the options again?
Good bit of business, always the same. Effie Ambrose. Expected more or outright flop.
Good bit of business for me. A very good bit of business. We got
Is that it? Interesting.
Yeah, good bit of business. He came in, done well. He's always going to have that 10 in a row season like every player would, where we just felt a shot from everywhere and got selfish, and in the end they wanted to go and play in England, and fair enough. But I thought that season under Lennon, when the 9 in a row season that got curtailed, I thought he was great for Celtic. He was really into form. So good bit of business for me. Came, played well at some points, and then left to a good level.
Is a good bit of business for you, Stephen? Because if you look at his contribution now, I know when he signed, he wasn't a blockbuster. When he signed, nobody went, yes, Ryan Christie's in the door. But eventually, when you look at his overall contribution, he became an invaluable member of the squad. We didn't want to lose him. He became a very, very important, a key player for Celtic, maybe brushing it at that sort of elite level. He's a very key player, strong player for Celtic. So can you be tempted to because we're viewing this in hindsight now. We're not saying at the time he was a blockbuster. At the time we thought he was a flop. We're saying now, after knowing all we know.
We'll just jump in here. Have we missed him? Have we missed him since he left? But...
Well, come on. You don't know. You don't know if you've missed him. He could be here outperforming Matt O'Reilly at the moment.
Yeah, he did look very, very good in the handful of games he played after Ange Postecoglou first came in. After the initial kind of sticky period that we went through, the couple of games at home against Dundee notably as well, it did look very good. It looked as if he could fit into this team very well. Overall, I think he's at least good bit of business, because I don't think that's in doubt. I think Ryan Christie was a great signing overall. It took him a long time to establish himself, but once he did, he was a key player for a time, for all the reasons Melly's already listed. That season in particular, I think he was excellent. I think he left probably at the right time overall. I think he saw an opportunity and went for it. I've not got a problem with that. I think if he's between two tiers, it's definitely going up the way it's not to Effie Ambrose just yet. So I think, good bit of business for me.
Okay, good bit of business confirmed. He finds himself in tier 2, the good bit of business tier. Next up on the random list, Jota on the wing. Oh, Stephen.
Oh, goodness. Oh, what a start. Are they all going to be at this level? Again, we as usual, setup is Jamie is the one in possession of the list. Melly and I are going off the top of the head. We are reacting live to these organic reactions. Jota, oh wow. Jota is at least good bit of business, bordering on elite so far, or the blockbuster signings. I'm actually quite confident already putting him into blockbuster signing. I think for all the reasons we've already discussed Jota a lot this season, the 22-23 season, and the thing that comes up time and again is that he was an absolute steal. Absolute steal. Well, so he goes well beyond good bit of business for me. He's blockbuster. Jota's blockbuster.
There's part of me, Melly, that watches Jota. Blotta, I was going to call him today. Blotta.
Jota.
So there's part of me, Melly, that watches Jota, and I don't think we yet fully realise how good this guy is. I think what we've got here has the potential to be, could already be, because there's not been enough games this season, but he's bossing it. He's just picked up, and he played here last season, he's come back this season, and already he's like, I'll piss this league. Watch me piss this. And he is pissing it, to use a Scottish turn of phrase. And part of me's like, is this like one of these Premier League, European level players? He's not tall. He's not big and strong and tall like a lot of these sort of his European counterparts are. He's quite small, and he is a wee bit. He is muscular, right? But
hardy though, isn't he?
He is. But he doesn't have that tall physique that a lot of these high elite European players. But I think he might have the ability to go much, much further.
I think so. I think he will move on probably sooner rather than later. He is looking like he's too good for this league, and I'm kind of putting him in the, as you say, within the fullness of time. If we're looking back in this like we do 10, 15 years in certain players, longer for some of them, you're going to look back and go, that guy was sensational. And I think he might find himself in that Nakamura and Moravcik bracket where they're here for 2-3 years, and then just you think back to the highlights and go, wow. So blockbuster for me, not a doubt about it.
Blockbuster, I think that one's pretty easy.
Jotbuster.
Jotbuster. Block Jota? No, it doesn't work, does it? Next up, Stefan Scepovic.
Oh.
What do you remember about Scepovic? Signed from Sporting Gijón.
Sporting Gijón,
As,
that's correct.
is Andy Walker that always likes to get those pronunciations
He
right?
does. Of his many faults, Andy Walker, he does at least try.
I
When
should
it
have
comes
done
to
the
that.
big knot. I should have done the big knot for Andy Walker.
Stefan Scepovic, right? Not going to be a lengthy description of him because I can barely remember him. There's something in the back of my mind about. I think his dad scored against Celtic in that really famous game. Was it the one that Giakoumakis scored 4 in Partizan Belgrade back in the very early 90s? I think his dad was involved in that. And that's about that's as close as I can get to remembering a Scepovic in anything relating to a Celtic game.
He had a good record at Gijon.
Yeah.
He had a good record, 20 odd goals in 30 odd games. He came with a bit of a pedigree. There was a fight over him, I remember that. I think he was meant to move to Getafe,
right?
And then Celtic came in and he sort of went, he was about to and he went, oh wait, I'm going to do the Celtic thing instead. And Getafe, I think, this is only me remembering him from the time, but I'm pretty sure Getafe tried to take us to UEFA because they think we sort of jumped into transfer the last minute.
Take that to UEFA in the morning.
Take that to UEFA in the morning, said Getafe. And then Scepovic arrived with us, but he didn't do much, did he, really?
No, I remember being on holiday once and we were playing Astra and he scored against that. But he was one of those guys, like, you were willing to do really well because you liked the look of him. You thought, oh, he's a decent scoring record elsewhere. But really, it was just pish because like, playing in that Ronnie Dyler team, it wasn't a very good team. And him and another man we'll maybe speak about, Guidetti, came in on deadline day right at the end. But yet Lee Griffiths was the main striker by the end of the season. So just another one that expected better from him, to be honest.
Aye, I think he's one of those number of strikers we've signed over the last 10, 15 years who just came in. They're always in the same price bracket as well. It's always the kind of 2.5, 2.7, 1.8 million pound bracket that we pay for these strikers. And so very few of them amount to much. I think he's a very obvious disappointment / expected better from him.
We signed him in 2014. He's still playing. He's only 32. He's had
Really?
18 professional clubs. A journeyman. He's been back and forth to Spain a number of times and now he's playing for Cyprus. I wonder if Neil Lennon Neil Lennon will try and pick him up. Speaking of Neil Lennon, the next one was a Neil Lennon signing. I'd say a favourite of Neil Lennon, Anthony Stokes.
Well, the players that played for Celtic so much that I just dislike. I cannot go with the guy shooting from corners. I just could never go with the guy. But he was effective, which is annoying as well. He's just one of those players. Done it in Scotland, fine. As soon as it came up with anybody with any sort of talent, he was nowhere to be seen.
Is that his fault though? Because what I might ask you to do with Anthony Stokes is, we all know the guy's a bit of a banger. Anyone that's seen him on Instagram knows he's the weirdest man in Glasgow. If he's still in Glasgow on Instagram, very, very odd. And he was very selfish on the pitch.
Yeah.
But that Stokes Nooper partnership was good. He was a bit. Might be blasphemous, but Stokes was kind of like our Chris Boyd. A wee bit. He did it at SPFL level. He did it in Scotland,
fair,
but he didn't really do it abroad. But that wasn't his fault. That was always his level, and he might have been signed to do that. And see the scoring from corners thing. I think that's something that we noticed. One of the first things, I think, one of the first Celtic memes we invented on this podcast. Because once you spotted it, you never unsaw it. Every single corner that he got, he would take it and he would try and stick it in. And I don't think he ever managed it.
Nope.
And it was all this selfish play, and he was a frustrating player. But that's kind of who he was. That's what we signed, Stephen. Do you know where I'm getting at?
Yeah, I think so. On the opposition thing, he was famously very regularly dropped for games against Rangers as well. I don't think he played many of those, and that happened to Chris Boyd. So it's quite a telling parallel that he was never really fancied for the bigger games. Criticism that followed Chris Boyd throughout his career was that he basically never scored against decent opposition. Stokes is maybe harsh to say that about him, but I do see the parallel. Yeah, but I do see the parallel with him. The thing with the Hooper partnership was it was very effective, and I remember thinking when they were both about 22, 23-ish, when they were both kind of fit and firing, as it were, for Celtic, I remember thinking to myself, just imagine how good these guys could get if they play. This isn't how football ever works out, but you always project into the future and think, see when these guys are going to be 27, 28, both still playing for Celtic, even though that never happens in the real world. They could be so good together. Stokes is reluctantly for me, I think he's a good bit of business because what I've just said about Scepovic is that we've signed a load of guys in that sort of price bracket and they never really work out. Stokes was even less than that. Was he maybe 1 million or something like that?
800,000 it was according to the Celtic Wiki, yeah.
Okay, well that's further strengthens it. When you consider of all the many flaws we've already discussed, of all the downsides that came with Anthony Stokes,
we could speak about a lot more.
Yes, yeah, attitude problems. Remember the tweet sent from the stands at Cali Thistle or whatever it was? There was something about
vaguely remember that now that you've mentioned it.
He tweeted something along the lines of, somebody maybe be able to correct me, it was to the effect of, I can't believe I've been dragged up here to basically sit in the cold
right.
and not get on or not be involved in the squad, something along those lines. So, at various times, stinking attitude, questionable things off the field and all that. If you distill it all down to what he actually turned in for Celtic for the price range, I think he's a good bit of business, sadly.
Reluctantly, I have to agree because...
58 league goals in 130 odd appearances.
It's decent. The only thing I can remember him doing in big games is he won a penalty at Ibrox and Samaras missed it, meaning we didn't eventually get 10 in a row. Thanks, Georgios. And the Carragandi, he was the one that set up James Forrest.
See, a lot of people forget that 10 in a row works both ways.
Yep.
We didn't just blow it at the end, we blew it at the beginning as well.
And who was manager both times he blew it?
Hey, you leave me alone out of this.
But I reluctantly have to agree with Stephen. He was a decent bit of business. If we're not going to have an anti-Stokes category just because I'm not fond of him, then decent bit of business.
You can stick him in Effie Ambrose if the option is there.
If he has Effie Ambrose, then he is Effie Ambrose. Because
I'll put him in Effie Ambrose.
So Anthony Stokes is Effie Ambrose because do you know what? Just so we don't bust the Effie Ambrose balloon too early, I'm going to put him in a good bit of business.
Yeah, I think he's a good bit of business. I think that's fairly uncontroversial.
Giorgos Giakoumakis.
Oh, Giakoumakis,
baby boy.
Well, that's two guys so far who've signed on the same deadline day, and this again, it can often be a letdown. Especially on deadline day when your club basically announces at 12 o'clock there will be no further business and you've still got people hanging about outside the stadium and all that, hoping to catch a glimpse of new signings. It can often just puncture your excitement about it. But days like that are why football fans get excited about it. Giakoumakis has been outstanding for Celtic so far. And I don't want to get too carried away because he has had limited playing time, I suppose, so far in his season and a bit now. But when he has played, boy, has he contributed. And is he blockbuster just yet? No, I don't think so. I think he's good bit of business for me so far. But I suppose we didn't say this up front, but I suppose as much as transfer fees can be quite arbitrary, with Celtic, they kind of do follow a certain trend. In England, it's basically one player can be 18 million, another can be 60, and they're basically the same player.
Yeah.
But in Scotland, it tends to give you an idea. But at 2.5 or whatever it was for Giakoumakis, I think that's an outstanding piece of business when it's compared with the things we've already said, with like Scepovic and Stokes and all that. His level of contribution has been brilliant so far. It's good bit of business for me.
Very good bit of business for me.
We're creating tiers as we go along here.
I love the guy. I think he offers Celtic so much. There was chat not so long ago about probably should sell him. I thought it was a lot of nonsense. I think you try and keep guys like that because they're so hard to come by. Not the best technical player, but gives absolutely everything and scores goals crucially. So very good bit of business for me.
We were all very keen to see what Giakoumakis could offer, weren't we, when he arrived on deadline day? The top goal scorer in the Dutch league, but his team went down. We had all these concerns about the Dutch league, and
there's 9 penalties that season as well, which also kind of signalled set off a couple of alarm bells as well.
And you're looking at it going, what can this guy bring? What can he offer? And then he came and he had the slow start. He missed the penalty against Livingston, and you're looking at going, is this guy just going to be a dud? And then he just scored and scored and scored, and every time he plays, he scores, and he ended up winning with the goals. And he's a different type of striker, and he's so passionate. You can tell he loves, and I get the impression with Giakoumakis that he is a guy who is fighting for that first team spot. He, at the moment, I know him and Kyogo are getting like split game time, but you can tell Giakoumakis sees himself as Celtic's first team striker. He's fighting for that, and I really like that competition between the two of them. So, I'd be inclined to call him a blockbuster, but it's a good bit of business.
Yeah,
he is a good bit of business.
Maybe in the fullness of time.
Yeah, maybe. If we conduct this in a couple of years or after he leaves, we can look back and go, turns out he was a blockbuster. Because how many goals did he get for his last season?
17.
Seven. The guy comes in and gets 17 league goals, top goal scorer in the Dutch league, and he's not a blockbuster signing.
Yeah, I think it was 13. It was a very, very low scoring league season. Last year it was 13 league goals, but 17 or 18 overall, which, still supports the point.
These have been pretty decent so far.
I know. What a standard.
Trust me. Trust me. They're not all great. Next up, Leo Connor.
Oh, right, okay. Right,
Man U, another player that maybe not so much deadline day, but we have a history of taking young players who, when they leave their club, particularly down south, the current guy looking after them, whether it's the manager or the youth coach or the reserve team or whatever the case may be, is quite annoyed about it.
Yeah.
This guy's got a big future. His development is best served here. Comes to Celtic, doesn't he play? Liam Shaw was one. Leo Connor was one. Famously, Ben Hutchison, Gareth Southgate was apoplectic that he left.
Right.
So Leo Connor came from Man U. Reasonably high. Was he not the captain of their reserve team?
Yeah, he was captain, yeah.
He was.
I wonder, I wonder if this is just a symptom of being a football fan. You want your up and coming, the highly rated up and coming players to do well, and you want to keep them, and you have the visions of them coming through and being the future captain and carrying.
Especially at Man United with the class of '92, wanking over that. All
the history that comes with that, and Celtic do it as well. Basically, every young player that leaves, we think, well, that was a mistake. We let him go too soon. I remember being on forums back in the day where people were cracking up at like Paul Lawson and Teddy Bjarnason leaving. I would rather have seen Strachan go than Teddy Bjarnason. Well, how did that work out? So it does happen quite a lot, and it's a natural thing for us to immediately go to the reactions of fans from the club that these players are leaving to come and join Celtic, and that was eye-opening to say the least. And captain of Man United's reserves, that does carry with it a certain level of prestige. If I didn't want to say hype, because what does that mean when you're signing a really young player? It does carry something with it. So when he came, I thought, well, that makes sense. Bring a guy like that in. But literally nothing has happened for the guy. Literally nothing. He hasn't made a single appearance. And normally we wouldn't include
He's left
a guy
now.
like,
Did you know that?
Yeah, that's right. So normally we wouldn't include a guy like that in such a list, because you really, there's no end to that. You could be starting listing 16-year-olds who signed on. It just so happened it was the 31st of August some year. But this is worth talking about in that, because of all the things I've just said, because of the Man United connection, because of the certain amount of hype that comes with a guy like that. Yeah,
and we did have high hopes for him, Melly, as Stephen said. He's now, but he finds himself. He went on loan to Partick Thistle, didn't play.
No,
spent 2 seasons on loan to Tranmere, and that in League Two, and that's where he's been managed now by Mickey Mellon, next Dundee United. Managers down at Tranmere, and he's playing there now.
Yeah, I think he's playing a defensive midfielder role down there, but I'm going to need to put him in flop, because of course I expected better, but if you're coming from that Man United reserves, you think, he must be close to the first team, because there was chat they wanted to keep him as well, and it probably just is a football fan thing where you think, one of our own, we need to keep them. But to not play a game for Celtic in not a great Celtic team with that right back position, I think we brought in a few at that point, so yeah, flop for me.
That sounded harsh when you said it, but now that I think about it, if we are going to have a category, a tier that says disappointed, expected more, that kind of suggests, it kind of hints at the fact that he's done something. We just wanted a wee bit more from him. So if, with that in mind, O'Connor having come here and not played a single minute, he is a flop, isn't he?
Outright flop. This man's not a flop. John Guidetti, football manager, sensation, a player that I'd always try and sign. Melly, you're a fellow foot manager fan.
Yep.
You would always try and get John Guidetti for Celtic. Always in football manager. He finally arrives. Terrific player. Player.
A very good player, but I'm going to put minute expected more, because the form he had up to January, and when he decided he wasn't going to come, he went off a cliff with that. Just couldn't be bothered. And I was like, this guy could have been our new number 9 for years to come. The goal against Inter Milan obviously stands out, but he could take free kicks. I remember a midweek hat-trick against Partick Thistle. He banged in the goals, and then he done a Negri, basically just disappeared for the rest of it. He'll always have the Inter Milan game, but I really wanted him to sign. I thought it would have been a perfect signing for Celtic. Like you always got him in Football Manager, he was a goal machine. He came, he scored goals. I just needed him to stay, but to just disappear like that and go off to Spain, fair enough. But he's never really played at a club as big as Celtic again. So expected more.
Ironic that, Stephen, because he did make some comments. He says, I went to Celtic, smashed it in the first half of the season, and they said, John, you need to sign a contract. And I said, listen, I don't owe you anything. I bet this is not how the conversation went. Celtic is a massive club, but I like big games. He says, I don't like it, with all due respect, going to Ross County away. When we won the league, we didn't even celebrate. We just walked around the pitch. In Sweden, they're drunk for a week when they win the league. I live for we did the impossible. He currently plays for AIK Solna, by the way. So
there's Lustig there as well. Still kicking a ball.
Kind of he kind of had the wrong end of the stick there, didn't he? Because he wants to be out for a week celebrating, partying because he won the domestic league, but also doesn't want to play for a club where you regularly win the domestic league. So you decide where he wants. So after Celtic, he went to let me just see, Celta Vigo, where he played. He was there on loan. No, he wasn't, sorry, my mistake. He went to Celta Vigo for 3 years, played 66 games, scored 11 league goals. Then they loaned him out to Alves, where he played 17 times for a season. Then he signed for Alves, where he played only 40 games in 4 years. Then he was loaned out again to Hannover 96, and now he's at his current club.
Is that the Wikipedia stats on the sidebar?
Yeah.
That's quite often just league games. But
That's what it's just these league games. But at the same time, though, it is a good indication of how his career's gone since leaving Celtic. I wonder how I want to play big games. I don't want to play away to Ross County. I don't know what the opposition's like today or at any of those stadiums that he spent the latter part of his career, but he could be doing a lot better had he signed for Celtic.
I quite like that. That was one of the biggest, with all due respect, which features no respect whatsoever.
The Mark Warburton special.
You've just said, with all due respect, but absolutely zero respect on what I'm about to say.
With all due respect, you're an annoying man and your wife is ugly. Sorry?
Yeah. So, John Guidetti, he'll always have the goal against Inter Milan, as Melly just said. He'll always have that quite early form. The free kicks I was going to mention, actually, because he's maybe underrated in that regard, because we always think about great free kick takers for Celtic, and he never really comes up in the conversation, even though he was very, very good. He'll always have the having to apologise for calling the Huns dead. Remember that?
Yes.
He said the Huns are dead and had to apologise for it. Absolute clean shots in the media, and Rangers fans grassing him in. Come for me as well. I've just said it and all. But
get no apology for him.
It's I agree. I think he's expected better, to be honest. I think Melly makes a good case for that, and I'm quite happy to back up that.
What could have been in it? Cause But I kind of feel, having looked at those comments he said, and I get it, and I can't remember what we're speaking about recently as well, but it was a strange time for Celtic, and while it was hilarious that Rangers died and went down, from a player like him coming from the outside to Scotland, like, what are you coming for? You're going to come in to play against Rangers, and you're coming to play in the Champions League, and you're coming to win trophies. Like, winning trophies during that time, Ronnie Dyler's 2 seasons, it was pretty meh. We won the league.
But he's won Buckshee since.
Exactly. But at the same time, like, you're coming to Scotland and expecting something and then not getting it. I can see why he would have thought, look, why don't I just go to Spain? The weather's better. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia and all that. But still, John, he could have smashed it here for a full season and then left, but he chose not to.
He disagrees. He quite literally says he smashed it.
He says he already smashed. So we put him in expected more.
Yeah, I think so.
Expected more. The next one up, Mulumbu. I can't even. I've only written Mulumbu. What's Youssouf? I was going to say Fabrice, but it's a Youssouf Mulumbu.
Yeah, Youssouf Mulumbu.
Ex West Brom. Not Cardiff, ex-West Brom, Kilmarnock
general.
Yes, midfield general. Steve Clark's midfield general at Kilmarnock. Signed for Celtic on a free, very strongly rumoured that we've managed to get this deal through a newspaper journalist that Celtic didn't even completely forgot it existed. Read in the paper one day that it was for free, and someone within Celtic went, let's get him. Turned up, and Stephen, if I remember correctly, we were we were what's just a few degrees above lukewarm. We were body temperature,
room temperature.
We were room temperature about Mulumbu arriving.
We try our best, don't we? Maybe even particularly me. I try my best with these signings. Try to look for the positives, and at that point, before it went completely off the rails with Brendan Rodgers, I was willing to accept a few of these. Remember, you put yourself back in that time period and there's all the chat about Lee Congerton being a total dud.
Yeah.
So many transfers hadn't worked out. I can't remember if that was before or after Comper and Jack Hendry, that window where we brought them in. After, right. So we are really at the very kind of edge of the Brendan Rodgers, Peter Lawwell, the board, the club implosion. This was it. This was it going off the side of the cliff after previously just teetering on it. With Mulumbu came as a Gary as well, run about the same time. Mulumbu was a mental signing. I don't know who decided it. You think, well, it kind of makes sense because we often, even to this day, people make the case for we need this guy for the Champions League or for Europe as it was at the time. We need a guy who come in, steady pair of hands, come in, shut up shop, close it down, all that sort of stuff. Mulumbu, his only contribution to Celtic is I can remember him coming off the bench against one of the Red Bull teams that season.
Oh, it was chaos, was it?
And he made it worse. far from shutting up shop and using a bit of experience, he was a total bomb scare out there. He made things even worse. He brought the pressure on top of Celtic, and that's the only thing I can remember him doing. He was far too old. He was just a total nothing signing. He is a complete flop. I think he maybe played a handful at most games, and I would defy anyone to even name a game that he played in apart from that.
I could
that
picture him in
one.
the luminous yellow strip.
Yeah.
I could picture him in that, but that is about it.
Yeah. Oh, it's like Superman here with his specs on.
Aye, they were getting steamed up. It's very, very warm in here.
Just I'll echo Stephen's thoughts. I remember you saying it when Azagiri came in, Jamie, that came back. This is a red flag. Like how have Celtic went a season without replacing Azagiri, and now a season
just
after
bringing
that,
him back.
we're bringing him back after speaking to Paul.
The replacement for Izagiri is Izagiri.
Older Izagiri.
Older Izagiri, having spent time in Saudi Arabia.
This was the summer of sort of discontent where we'd missed out on John McGinn, and that would have been the perfect replacement for Stuart Armstrong. Instead of signing John McGinn, was it Arzani we signed and Brendan Rodgers? I don't even know who he is, so you could tell there was.
You can get looking back. You can kind of see why Brendan left.
Yeah, definitely.
You can see why he left.
And this signing as well summed that up, because we got to deadline day, we hadn't signed MD, and this guy who was available on a free had been available on a free all summer, and this is who we signed. Like, the guy's just missed out on a full pre-season, and we're bringing him in. He's got catch up to do. An utter flop. Signed when he was 31. I just about turned 32. Yeah. Don't even think he made 5 appearances for the club, and then that Celtic team was really struggling in that season. Flop.
The thing about it is, I saw an interview with Brendan Rodgers recently, and he was talking about leaving Celtic, and he went, one of his main motivations was the investment wasn't there to push the club to the next level, and he wanted to compete in Europe. That's what his main thing was. And when you're watching some of the signings that we made under his time, he's probably going, I cannot work with this pish. You know what I mean? So next up, Miku.
Oh,
tried his heart out in the Barcelona game.
But that's about it, isn't it?
Still playing. Plays for Real. Signed for Real Murcia in this window at 37 years old.
The best bit about Miku was that during, I think, Neil Lennon's unveiling as the new Omonia Nicosia manager, he managed to squeeze a mention of Miku and the Barcelona win into that press conference, because I think Miku used to play for them or something like that. So he must have spotted the name and thought, oh, here's an opportunity. get this, lads. I was once involved in this game. So Miku, funnily enough, I can remember him playing in that cracker of a shirt, the white one with the black collar.
Yeah.
I can picture him playing in that, being involved in somewhere in the Barcelona game as we were getting pelted with about 99.9% possession from Barcelona and barely having the ball up the other end of the pitch. So he was there, he was present in that game. Barely remember anything else.
Played 11 league games for Celtic,
which
is a lot more than I remember.
Yeah. I remember
2 goals as well.
We signed him on deadline day and Lasad. These were the Hooper replacements, I'm sure. See if you take the Barcelona game out it, because yes, he was on the pitch. I'd like to see how many touches he got.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I remember him scoring up at Tannadice, but honestly, I'm going to need to put him in a flop. But he came with a sort of decent reputation, but 11 games in a team that didn't have any real strikers at the time, and he came with an alright reputation, you think. Yeah. He's coming in decent level he's played at. Barcelona game, he was on the pitch, but was he just running about doing doggies? So I'm going to need to put him in flop.
So Stephen, Miku, where can we find him? What category in this tier list do you put him in? Flop, expected more?
Again, flop. Just just the statement of that just sounds very harsh. When really it was a bit of a nothing signing. But we have set our own rules here. We have to stick to them. I think it is a flop basically because it could have been so much more. You could reasonably put him in the expected more thing, but he didn't really do anything, did he? So I think it is flop for that reason.
Jozo Simunovic.
Oh,
Simunovic.
Chris Commons here.
Oh, what was he called him like Simovic or something like that, didn't he? He just cut out half his name.
He's not a linguist, is he? Chris Commons, that's the problem.
Oh, this is quite a tough one because he came in with talks about a big fee, wasn't it? He was the Van Dijk replacement.
Yeah, did we not work out that Jozo was the most expensive centre half since Alan Stubbs?
Yeah.
At the time, he must have been.
I think it was all add-ons and all that,
true.
but
Could have
Still counts. In fact, it's him and then maybe only Carter Vickers. I think he was
Julian.
He was
Julian's
of
up there.
course.
Julian was after him,
yeah.
wasn't he?
Julian Allen was after, yes.
But at that point, he must have been the most
was,
expensive since Stubbs, which is fully
4 million.
Fully 20 years between the two signings.
We're getting a certain Raphael shite.
Barely counts. Come on.
How could I possibly forget that? Weirdly, I was actually looking into a bit of Jozo's career just recently.
Do you know what age he is?
Is he late? Or
Was he 27 or something?
He's 28 then. He's only 28.
Goodness me. I was just, for absolutely no reason, I just found myself one of those sort of Wikipedia rabbit holes, and I was looking at Jozo's career, and I had forgotten about that weird. Remember his international career?
Aye, where
he declared for Croatia, then decided he wanted to play for Bosnia, and then when he was called up for Bosnia, he said...
Was it not Montenegro?
No, it was Bosnia and Herzegovina. He was called up for them, but then decided that he felt too bloody Croatian to play for them, so he went back, and Croatia like, aye, no bother, mate.
No, I don't think he was allowed to go back.
No, he wasn't. No, I don't think so. But he wouldn't have.
And amongst all these Bosnians are wanks, man. His opinion, not mine. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. I preferred.
Didn't know this place was going to be full of these bloody Bosnians. I know. But yeah, that's nothing to do with his Celtic contribution, right enough. But Jozo was all right, wasn't he? I think he at various times he was very, very good. Very, very injury prone.
Yes.
Had a couple of massive moments, notably the tackle on Kenny Miller and scoring the most just generally nice goal in Celtic's history. The Billy McNeil one after he died, and he scored in minute 67 with number 5 on his shot and all that. That's the kind of garbage you would write out of a script because it's too far fetched. It's too too sentimental.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because quite often when something like that happens, people go, "You wouldn't even write this." No, it's precisely the sort of thing you would write. You would write exactly this happening, but then you've taken that a step further by saying, "But then you would decide it was too far fetched."
A script writer would be like, "Come on, mate, it's
a bit twee,
bit saccharine." But it actually happened in real life. Yeah.
We sent him to London. I remember we sent him down and got a specialist look at his back. I think there was that sort of protracted medical situation. We let him go, and there was a lot of uproar when he left. People thought he should come back. There was clubs interested in him. I think Hibs were trying to get him and all that sort of stuff. And he was. This is from memory. I've got this Wikipedia down, so I will check myself in a minute. But I feel like he was without a club for a while,
a full season.
Aye, and then he's surfaced in Croatia now, which he's kind of like he's kind of found his level. And I always kind of thought he was better than that. Do you know what I mean? I thought when he arrived he was going to be our Vidic.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I thought.
See, I'm stuck between good bit of business and expected more, because a guy coming in that young and won leagues with Dynamo Zagreb. He went an invincible season. Subsequently done that with Celtic, but he was like the first choice for a while, him and Boyata. That's just because we were always waiting to buy another centre half.
Was he ever any? Look, this might seem like a simple question, right? But was Jozo ever actually any good? Did you ever watch Jozo go, "That's a cracking big centre half we've got there"? Or did he just play a lot of games?
This is where I'm struggling, because expected more because Croatian young guy coming in, good pedigree, already won the league, the kind of guy we should be going for.
Looks like centre half as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
We'll sell him on for a lot of money. Yet he was there for his full contract and just sort of left without MD really making too big a deal of it. So I'm stuck between two categories here.
He did have that really good partnership for a while was Sviatchenko. I remember
Handball,
thinking,
that season.
I remember thinking at the time that he and Sviatchenko could be, again, much like this, like I said with Hooper and Stokes, these could be the future of the centre half pairing. Didn't really quite work out like that. Very, very injury prone, as I've already said. But Jozo was. I remember there was a time where did he not go for a medical with Torino or something like that? Yeah, so Torino tried to buy him for a decent fee while he was still at Celtic, and I think from the time I think. I'd rather keep him, because you always think these guys are going to come back from injury. Yeah, exactly. Should have definitely. I can't remember off the top of my head why that didn't work out. It might have been.
I think it was the Invincible treble season. Him and Gordon were two players. Remember Chelsea came in for Gordon,
course,
but we just wanted to keep the squad to try and get.
Is it any wonder looking back at that? Because we think, we're mad not to sell Craig Gordon to Chelsea. Craig Gordon was supposedly furious that we didn't let him go to Chelsea. No wonder, man. The money he would have got down there was unbelievable.
For being a fourth choice keeper or something like that.
But he's secured his grandkids' futures with that transfer, and then we didn't let him go. But put yourself in Brendan Rodgers' shoes and look at how the signings were going at that time. No way would you. I mean, Jozo might have been great, but who they would bring in the door after Jozo left to replace him, you'd be like, you would not trust these guys for a minute, and it's probably the same with Gordon. Comper, there you go, jeez, man. So
Jozo, I think I'm just going to go. I'm going to go good bit of business. I think Jozo was all right. I think it came.
I mean, he was expensive though.
Just remember the fee. Just remember the fee there.
We did get.
I think for the money, I'm going to say, if this helps you, for the money I expected more.
Aye.
For the money I expected more.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm in the same category as you. I think we need to be quite brutal here. I did like the guy, but he didn't play enough. But as well, his trophy cabinet he won 3 seasons with Zagreb before us, and then he won the league every year he was at Celtic. I expected more from that because he had everything. Croatian, looked like a centre half, big money fee, came with that potential and pedigree. Should have came for a season or two, sold him on him, he didn't, and he just snuck out back door. I expected more.
Yeah,